Well, greetings again from South Carolina. I just wanted to tonight take care of some questions that I get asked quite often about the anatomy of an 18th century letter. So tonight I think we will go over that. To begin with, I generally start with a period letter. I got this one off of the South Carolina Archives website. This is from the 1760s from Henry Laurens, one of the wealthiest men in the state of South Carolina. And he wrote this one to a merchant in Philadelphia in I think it's 1763. So what I do is I print the letter out, and then I actually find the original crease lines and fold it to the actual crease line, so then I learn how this letter was folded. So I'll be using this letter as my historical example to write the letter that we'll be doing tonight, and then I'll show you what exactly these things mean along the way. Okay, so inside the letter, I always put my date and where I'm located at the top here. So in 1774, I'm located in Kioways, the Kiowee of the Cherokee settlement, the 27th of November, 1774. I just take the date that it is today in the real world, and I assign to it the year, whatever I have researched for that particular letter. So that's how I do that. So in the British world, it was always the date first, the day of the month, then the month, and then the year, 27th November 1774, and not as we describe it as November 27th. So other than that, I put my salutation at the end with my signature, then I fold it up. Another charming feature I've seen on a bunch of old letters, especially from South Carolina, is underneath of this flap, they will put their name. So I'm going to put mine as D. Gillespie. And then they'll put the date. So in this case, it's 27 November of 74. And I'll let that dry and then tuck it in. Okay, so what I start with is the word to. So I'll go something like that. And I cheat, I must confess. I go back and I pencil in, so to speak, the thicknesses on these, because it works. And I am not ashamed to tell you. So I just thicken the stroke by kind of drawing it in where I feel like it needs it. Just like that. So here is the original letter copy that I made. And this is my letter that I somewhat used as a template, so to speak. And that helps me to learn a period proper way. And then it also teaches me to go and study each of these marks along the way. So whoever or wherever I'm writing the letter to, I'll get online and look up the historical maps, not only for that correct region, but also for the correct time frame. And that generally takes me about 30 minutes per letter, but that way I have more colorful details on how to properly direct the letter to make sure that it arrives safely in its location back in 1775 and not in the modern context. So how would it have gone in that direction in those days? In this case, it would have probably gone upriver. So this is all important little facts and clues to help us to make these letters more interesting historically and more accurate. So if you don't know how to fold an 18th century letter, please go back to the other video that I'll put in the description up here in the little tag up here. You can go to that one and see how to fold your letter. But we're assuming you already know how to fold an 18th century letter with this one tonight. So to start with, on this one, Mr. Lawrence just wrote the word to. I've seen that used on several 18th century original letters. They would write the word to, just like we write to and from on a gift label, so to speak. So I wrote a big to, just like Henry Lawrence. And in this case, I wrote the subject's name here, Sage N. Tromley. And the next line is what her occupation is today. So she is actually a masseuse. So I put on here Doctor of Physic. I thought that would be kind of neat and be of interest to her. She lives near Lake Champlain up in New York. So that is the way I wrote that. So now if we go over to here, this is the interesting portion to me personally, as this interesting character is a P, which stands for packet. This is a closer up version of that interesting letter. So it has this form here, and it comes around like so. So anytime you see this symbol on an 18th century letter, it means it's a packet ship. So I use that one because Henry Lawrence used that one. And I have Brian Allison to thank for that detail from Tennessee. Thanks, Mr. Allison, as I have him to thank for a lot of these tricks. So what this means here is that this letter was sent by Packet Captain Wright from Charleston all the way to New York, because I'm shipping this from South Carolina to New York. So I actually had to do a little research to find out the captain's name and the name of the ship. So in 1774, there was a packet ship. It was actually a brig also. It says Brig Charlestown, so that was the name of the ship, the Brig Charlestown, and it was a packet captained by S. Wright, and it was bound for South Carolina. So that's why I used that one in particular there. I'm assuming that that one also came back and forth between the two. So that's why I used that one for historical notes. Sometimes on the fronts of these letters also, you would see payments. So paid 1 was written on the front of an original South Carolina letter. And I take a piece of sanguine or red chalk, and they would have had this available in the 18th century. You can get it at Hobby Lobby. There you go. See there? And I just wrote near La Valcour on the top here, because that's a description that may help the delivery to make it more successful. So near Valcour is what I put on the top of that. Also on my letter, I used an original feature that Mr. Henry Lawrence used on his. I put the 3 letters here, as he did, QDC, and that is actually a little prayer in Latin. In Latin it would have said Quae Deu Conduce, and that just means, or God shall lead. Sometimes you would see it in English, it would be WGP, which means whom God protect. So it's a little prayer that this captain would make it and be protected and make it safely to his destination, not only for his benefit, but for the benefit of the letter itself. So QDC, Quae Deu Conduce, God shall lead, or WGP, whom God protect. A little prayer written on the front of the letter. So the anatomy of the back of the letter, to me, is just as interesting. We have here the stamp here that it was received in Charlestown. So I'm actually sending this letter in South Carolina up here in the Cherokees, in the Kiowa area, the town of Kiowa, in 1775. So it would have had to go all the way down to Charlestown by wagon or by horseback or anybody that was headed that direction, and then it would have left port in Charlestown and went on the brig, the packet ship, all the way up the coastline to New York. So I use this historical map from 1775 to reference my local friends that I know where they live in the area of South Carolina, so I can find out the name of their area back then. So anyway, my letter has just been arrived in Charlestown, so they would have stamped it with a piece of lead, probably lead stamp. And then this is called the bishop's mark. In a future video, Lord's willing, I will tell you how I put this this stamp on the back of the letter, and I'll also go into more description about the bishop mark. I actually cheated and made my own bishop mark. I just attached it to a large block of wood, and I took a piece of rubber and just carved it out with chisels, and I made my own bishop's mark. And then up here in my desk, I actually have alphabetical letters with rubber stamps on the bottom that I use to do my bishop's marks with, and my dates and these kind of things. But originally they would have been just lead letters like this here, and they would have used that. But unfortunately I don't have enough money to buy a whole set of those, so I must use the rubber stamps in their place. Okay, so now for the bishop's mark on the back, I have these little rubber stamps that I use. So I'm going to put the D. I'm going to assume that this letter is going to arrive in Charlestown about December the 1st, because it's November 27th now. So we'll put a DE, the first two letters. It means December. And then the date will be the 1st. So we'll just put a big old fat 1. Sometimes I'll pre-stamp it a time or two to make it look lighter. And these are a little bit fatter, so I have to be careful. So there's the 1st right there. So the bishop's mark is just a way for the letter to have stamped on it that it was received in Charlestown on December the 1st. Now I wrote this letter on November 27th, so I'm going to assume it's going to take at least 4 days for this letter to get to Charlestown. So I post date it on these letters. I date it, later. So December the 1st. And there's the bishop mark to show that it has arrived in Charlestown. And of course then we have the seal, that's my seal, that was hand engraved by a friend of mine, Mark Thomas. Thank you, Mark. What a beautiful piece of art, and with our South Carolina crescent. And then I'll take my sanguine and I'll write IH4. I do that on almost every letter because I saw it used on an original from South Carolina. I'll be honest with you, I don't know what it means, but it looks pretty authoritative. And then I'll take and write a 7 with a line over it because I've seen that on a few. And I'll write that over that so that it looks like it's been a part of the process. I'll also dribble pieces of wax along the way in just odd dribbles on purpose. Now with that being established, I wanted to show some more period letters, originals, that I have run off of the copy machine and folded with the original folds, which is a lot of fun. Most letters all letters are very different. There's no standard way, so don't ever let anybody tell you they have to be just like this letter. This is the one that suits me, and I like it because of it being from South Carolina. This is a letter written from Francis Marion in South Carolina to his son in Connecticut. As you can see, there's no bishop's marks on it. There's nothing. It's very simple. That's the way it was received. Here's another one written from Andrew Pickens, General Andrew Pickens, during the Revolutionary War by the way of public service. So it was a free to mail. This one to the Reverend Mr. Samuel Ockham in Mohegan. It did look like a wafer on the back, but you know, most letters were very plain. You don't have to fill them up with a lot of juicy details. I like to do that because I like to make the letter more interesting for the person who receives it. But it's not always necessary to have a bishop's mark. They would only have been put on in the larger cities. So if your letter is going inland or intrastate, so to speak, and not to a large port, then there's really no reason to put a bishop's mark or a stamp on there of that city. It's only used for larger towns like Boston, Charlestown, Philadelphia, places like that. So I hope that this video has been helpful. The main thing to keep in mind is there are almost no standards for these things. So there is a lot of creative leeway within it. I like to change up the inks, so I use a walnut hull ink, which I know probably wasn't as typical, but it's all I have right now. I would like to upgrade to oak gall ink someday. So if you have black ink or brown ink, the brown ink looks better to me. So I like to vary the types of writing on the surface. This would have been written all by the person sending the letter, but I like to change the handwriting, change the type of writing instrument, such as the sanguine and a pencil, and the more variety I show on the letter, the more authentic it looks, as if it has changed hands in many different ways. So if videos of this nature appeal to you, please consider subscribing to our channel. We would appreciate it. And if you have any comments or questions, I know there's going to be tons of questions, please feel free to ask. I don't have all the answers, but I'll try to find them. This is just the beginning stages of more videos, hopefully. So please stay tuned and please consider subscribing. Thank you very much.